This is the beautiful city of Riga. Colourful houses, impressive churches, and loads of amazing history. However, the further you walk from the centre, the more evidence you can see of a darker past. The imposing, brutalist buildings remind you that only 32 years ago, Latvia was occupied by the Soviet Union. For 51 years, innocent Latvian people were watched, followed, detained, and killed. Within these beautiful walls was the center of it all.
I'm Charlie Roscoe, and somewhere behind me there is a very depressing building. From the outside, this building is absolutely beautiful. I'm looking at it now. The white pillars, the lovely balconies. You could even say it's romantic. However, underneath that building is a very, very dark part of Soviet history. So don't let its lovely facade fool you. It is horrid. The building is known as Corner House, and it's an ex-KGB headquarters. And in the basement, there's a whole prison where they used to keep and execute innocent Latvian people. Today we have the chance to head inside. We're taking a tour of the prison cells. I'm gonna take you with me. So without further ado, let's go and see what life was like for a prisoner back in Latvian Soviet times. Although one quick note about the outside of the building before you head inside, look at the windows. All of the windows for this building are completely blurred out. Nobody can see inside. So obviously that's already pretty suspicious, but let's head in.
Our tour began in the KGB office. Here they would take pictures of the captured Latvian people, take their fingerprints, and also all of their valuables from them and keep them in these filing cabinets. The next room we saw was the interrogation room. The way that the Soviet system worked was that all they needed to imprison someone was a signed confession. The Soviet government really didn't care if the inmate was actually guilty or not, so they used torture methods to force people to sign the paper. They just wanted to arrest as many people as possible. They broke fingers, they whipped, they beat people with batons like the one on the table. The list of torture techniques is endless. In a way, the whole prison was a big torture chamber. We were then shown the cells. The tiny cells.
Here we are in a real life KGB cell. You see how cold it would have been? It's crazy. Here we are, look at the tiny bed frame they would have had. Big, thick iron doors with a big peephole. And these are tiny cells. They're used as holding cells. I'm a short guy, and I can hardly fit through the door. This is me stood. I fill out the whole thing. The whole thing. It's crazy. With a lovely Soviet paint job as well. Nice yellow colors. Lovely. Look at this. It's tiny. And apparently multiple people will be forced in here. More than just two. 2 beds for maybe 4 people. I'm not sure. But it is just tiny and cold, man. It's so cold. See, the lights are off now, but I'm not even sure if the lights would be on back in the day, you know? It's just, I doubt it.
Although, just ignore everything I said, because our guide actually told us afterwards that the lights were kept on all the time so the inmates were unable to sleep. And with all the people packed tightly in these small cells, it became like a sauna. This constant humidity and lack of sleep acted as another torture method. Next, we saw the yard. This yard was absolutely tiny. Inmates would come here for 20 minutes a day, where they had to walk around in circles with their hands behind their backs. They weren't even allowed to talk to each other. The yard was split into two halves, so inmates who knew each other could be split up while outside. Guards would walk along these platforms with rifles, watching closely. This was the only fresh air that prisoners got. We went down into the basement to see the kitchen. This is where the prisoners' meals were prepared. Every day they were given a fish soup, which was made in these huge kettles. Although apparently there was so little sustenance in the food, it was pretty much a small amount of fish in some water. Lastly, we were shown the darkest room of them all. Over 140 people were woken up in the middle of the night, hands tied behind their backs, and led through this door into this room. They were told to kneel down, facing this wall. They were then shot in the back of their head. All of the coloured markers on this wall highlights a bullet hole. When executions took place, the KGB would hang plastic tarp to cover the walls, and there were drains so they could easily wash all the blood away. Their bodies were then loaded onto trucks where they were mass buried. And that is unfortunately how life ended for far too many innocent Latvian people during the Soviet occupation.